Welcome back to the Lemon Factor. I'm Chad, and today we're going to test out the Phearable Stage 4 ECU tune on our 10th generation Honda Accord. So the Phearable Stage 4 is the tune for when you want to use ethanol, an ethanol mixture, and Phearable does call for a mixture of 30 to 35%. We have 36%. No other reason except for that's just how it came out while I was trying to mix it. But we want to find out how much horsepower and torque does the Phearable Stage 4 add to our project car. We already have several modifications on the car. During our last video, we tested the off-the-shelf KTuner tune for ethanol, and I have to say, I wasn't all that impressed. It felt good. It felt like a lot of power, but when we took it to the dyno, it wasn't all that much. Plus, the K control values they weren't high, but they kept increasing as we did each subsequent pull. Very different than my experience with the Phearable Stage 4. So I want to tell you a little bit about its behavior on the street. We'll find out how much horsepower and torque it produces on the dyno, and we're going to take a look at the dyno graphs, and I'll give you some feedback about how I feel about the tune from the experience on the dyno. So if you are interested in finding out exactly how much horsepower, how much torque the Phearable Stage 4 ECU tune can produce on a 10th generation Honda Accord, then stay tuned. Okay, remember, we do have several modifications on our project car already. We have the PRL high volume air intake. We have the PRL high volume Catted Downpipe. We have the Mishimoto Intercooler. And of course, we're running the KTuner. And in this case, we're running the Phearable Stage 4. So a little feedback on the KTuner's ethanol tune. It felt really quick, because when we tested it on the dyno, we saw that all of the torque, the peak torque, happens right away. As soon as you roll into the throttle, 2,000, 2,500 RPMs, it spikes. You have all of that torque. So on the street, of course, it feels really, really good. And then it dies out from there. What I didn't like is that on the dyno, the pulls were very inconsistent compared to all of our tests in the past. In testing different modifications, it probably jumped the most in between runs, and we stuck to our standard testing procedures. So now, of course, this is a free tune. So what do you expect? KTuner is offering it for free, which I think is great. So I don't want to come across as totally negative. But with that said, we do want to find out if the Phearable Stage 4 that you do have to pay for, is that a noticeable improvement? And I have to say, on the street, it actually doesn't feel as powerful. So I'm hoping my butt dyno is just not calibrated properly, but it doesn't feel as strong as the KTuner. The long-term fuel trims on the KTuner would reach high negative, 8, 9, even negative 10, where I've noticed over the past week or so in driving the Phearable that it's more low single digits. So if it is a negative number, it's negative 3, 4, and I've even had it go to a positive fuel trim of maybe 1 or 2. So that tells me that the tune is more in tune with what my car needs, with what our car needs. With that said, why don't we head over to Dyno Pro in Denver and find out how much horsepower we're producing. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing, turning on notifications so that you're made aware of future videos. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you really like this video, please consider hitting that super thanks button right at the bottom of the video. Let's take a look at 4 graphs that we have here. So the first one is multiple runs, and you can see the consistency of this Phearable Stage 4 tune. This is the graph comparing the Phearable Stage 4 to the KTuner's Ethanol tune. And in this one, you can see, obviously, we're getting more horsepower and more torque, but there's a cutover point right around, what is that, 3,200 RPMs, where actually the Phearable is making a little less early on in the RPMs. And again, for me, I think that's fine. I would much prefer that so that the car can get up to speed, can get going, and then take advantage of that added horsepower and torque later on in the RPM range when hopefully it has traction. This graph shows the difference between the Phearable Stage 3 and the Phearable Stage 4. You can clearly see the difference, what 36% ethanol mixture will do for your 10th generation Honda Accord. And then lastly, just because we've done so much so far, I wanted to go back and take a look and see where we are today with this Phearable Stage 4 compared to our baseline runs with no modifications whatsoever. This graph really shows how tunable the 2-liter Honda Accord is. I have to say, I am pleasantly surprised. I was nervous that it wouldn't produce the amount of horsepower and torque that the KTuner off-the-shelf tune, you know, the free tune made, and I was wrong. It clearly makes more horsepower, more torque, but I think I know why. The difference is the KTuner's ethanol tune, that torque comes on right away. So it feels faster, right? Where the Phearable Stage 4, the peak torque for the Phearable, I think is around 3,800 RPMs, which is good. I think that is much better because this car has so much torque that once you lay into it, you just spin your tires. So I'd rather have the torque, the peak torque, later on in the RPM so you can get going and start using that. So I think that's why it felt a little bit different. I have to say, I'm really impressed by the tune. It is clearly making more horsepower. It's making more torque. And remember, I'm here at high altitude, not a lot of oxygen. And because of that, you know, I'm probably getting a little less horsepower than any of you sitting at sea level would. I'm going to try my best to test out the 0 to 60. It's getting colder here. I love to keep the summer tires on so that I have that grip. So we'll see what happens. You know what? It's a front wheel drive car with nearly 400 foot-pounds of torque. It's gonna spin no matter what. But with that said, I think we're done for today. Thank you very much for joining, and until next time.